Our next Fireside Chat will cover the topic of cultivating the fusion workforce and will be moderated by Dr. Ryan Carpenter, Special Advisor at SCSP. Please welcome to the stage Dr. Stephanie Diem, Assistant Professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, Dr. Troy Carter, Director of the Fusion Energy Division at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and Dr. R. David Edelman, Chief Policy and Global Affairs Officer at TAE.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are deep in digestion mode, so get that coffee because we're going to have a great panel for you here today. And we're talking about one of the most important things with fusion. It's not the technology so much as the people. People matter. I love that last presentation because she named innovators, individuals, and also companies who had these people, the latest and greatest technology, but they had the highest order people. And today we need that for fusion and for fusion to innovate, for us to stay on the cutting edge. So today we're going to talk a little about the report, and I want to put this to the panel and say, you know, you guys talk about talent in such a way that you want a full spectrum workforce. Could you describe for us what that actually means, other than like PhDs? Let's talk about what that means to actually have a full spectrum workforce.
Well, I'm happy to start. First of all, thank you so much for being here. And this is such a critical conversation to bring the national security and national imperative together with the research institutions that are advancing this science and the companies that are helping to bring it into reality. From TAE's perspective, you know, what we're thinking about in full spectrum, this company has been around for over 25 years. And so, like many other companies in this place, we started with research, obviously. We had a lot of PhDs in this space. In fact, I think we are the largest single employer of PhD physicists out of the physics department of UC Irvine, which is actually where we started. We're a spin-out of UC Irvine. But as we've been thinking about this for the last 25 years, you've heard from other companies who've been up here. The timeline that we are on is one in which our thinking now is as much about mastering the physics science as it is about the engineering challenges and the operation challenges going forward. So what does it mean? First of all, we're not done with plasma physicists, okay? We're going to have to hire more of those as we start thinking about getting more and more energy out of these systems. How do we do this at scale, and how do we engineer these systems ultimately to be useful power plants? But then we're thinking right now, and indeed are hiring specifically we're on our sixth generation machine, 3 of them at national lab scale. That requires a lot of engineers. It requires engineers that are thinking both in terms of how you build a experimental physics machine, which is what we've done before, but also how do you interface with the grid? How do you think about a power plant? How do you think about heat exchange? How do you think about some of the fusion-specific bits, which I'm sure others will talk about? We talked about here. We have many of them, but also people who are being prepared now for a job category that doesn't exist, and that is the safe operation of a fusion power plant. If those people have to come online along with our plants in the early 2030s, maybe as soon as early as 2030 itself, we need to be thinking about building that workforce now, training those people, and critically, they need expertise with the machines we, the companies and others, are actually building. And so that's a critical part of it.
Couldn't agree more. Hey, Troy, is there anything that you want to add to the full spectrum since you're at Oak Ridge?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree with everything David said there. I mean, going back to this, one of the points you made, I mean, we spent a lot of effort on the plasma physics. It's still important to continue that investment. There's a lot more work to be done. Having said that, we've underinvested in fusion materials and technology. We need to have more material scientists more people that work on breeding blankets to make tritium. If you're not going to use tritium in your fuel cycle, you need more plasma physics, so that all comes full circle. But in addition to that, in addition to the R&D staff, we need people to know how to build, right? So we need people that can build these devices. We need people that can do plumbing, welding, electricians. We need people to help advocate for fusion, people that can communicate, can advocate for policy, can help run these companies. I guess we need lawyers, too, to make this happen.
Oh, okay, well, maybe not.
Okay, maybe not, fine.
We need a lot of fusion lawyers. Everyone in this room got really excited.
No, but really there's an opportunity, I think, as we look to grow from the R&D space to commercialization. The workforce needs are shifting. We still have a lot of investment that needs to happen on the PhD front, but we need masters, bachelors, trade school, all the way down to make this successful.
You know, Stephanie, you're in many ways on the front lines of this issue. Your students are graduating, they're going into this field. Could you talk about what's the most severe shortage, what you're hearing from industry, but also when you get in the classroom, when students are talking to you about this workforce, how do you describe fusion to your students?
So fusion opens up this, and we've been hearing this throughout the day, this potential to radically transform humanity. And that really drives a lot of students to that field, because they're interested in the science and technology, but they want to apply that to change the world. And so that speaks to that, and also brings a curiosity to the problem, because it's a really it's a grand challenge. And they love to be tackling that challenge together. And so in my research group, we have built a tokamak. And that has taken several years, but 60% of the staff, is plasma physicists, and the other 40% is highly skilled engineers and technicians. And we couldn't do that, even at the university scale, without these technical staff. We have to work in really unique environments. It's ultra-high vacuum environments with high voltage power supplies, high precision manufacturing, and you have to do that in high magnetic fields too. And that takes a very unique skill set that we need to bring that in. And speaking to what my colleagues said about, bringing in other fields and interdisciplinary approaches, another research initiative that we have too is really bringing those in. It's the policymakers, the communication experts and things like that to really build up that and support that fusion energy ecosystem to make it flourish.
So I love you just about ecosystem, because one way to tell a report is how serious they take talent, because they'll talk about scaling the technology across different industries. And my first question is, great, so how do you grow more people for that field? And so one of the things you guys talk about in the report is growing the graduate and postdoc talent. But I'm wondering, is it a funding issue, or is it something deeper than that, a little deeper seated? In particular, how we train students for an industry that is growing and thriving, but also is limited to people, like the number of people you have. It's a numbers game. I'll let David do that.
Okay. No, I certainly agree with that. There's no question here that one of the challenges that we're going to run into is the critical limitations that are increasingly there for funding of STEM graduate degrees, period. We need more students that are coming out in this. And I think, the Commission's recommendation of, over 100 plus PhDs and postdocs that would be funded in this space is exactly the sort of start to something that would be commensurate with the challenge that we have in front of us. That is an important recommendation that we need to do. And we as a company are proof of how that can work, right? We're spun out of UCI. We hired these people to UCI. Why are we able to hire folks from UCI and UCLA? Because they are able to come to our device in Southern California. They're able to run their experiments in graduate school on our device, and therefore they become experts, not just, and I don't mean to minimize it, not just in the facilities that are pure experimental facilities that might be there or sponsored by their universities, and those are great, but specifically if they want to go into industry, if they want to focus on this, they can play with a machine that is a national lab scale machine. So yes, funding the PhDs, but also ensuring they have the proximity to the devices that are able to do it, to make sure that the funding support allows them to do secondments or summer research or other collaborative initiatives with it. I think right now there's some limitations, for instance, on undergrads and master's students. Maybe only postdocs can go to commercial machines. In some contexts, that's not the right approach. If we are thinking about a pivot here that is going to train a workforce on how to do science for, operate on, be part of these machines, we want to throw our doors open to help get them trained on those systems as well as part of the broader research ecosystem here. It's not the only piece of the puzzle, but I think it's really important, and the funding has to reflect that, as do the economic imperatives of the academic game, which is, as you point out in the Commission report, rather different than what we're experiencing in the private sector.
I'll make a couple points on top of that. I think it's important to fund the students, but if you want to have the students go, there's a point made by David Lynn in an earlier panel, that students show up because of the R&D that's happening at the institution, the facilities, the infrastructure. You need to grow the faculty. To grow the faculty, you've got to have that R&D funding. So that's important to go along with that. You need to have, again, the universities are the source of innovation. The companies have spun out of universities, as already mentioned. You want to continue that innovation. The workforce comes with icing on the cake, so you need to invest in that. Another point, you asked the question about changing the way we do education. I think it is important in this certain context that we have really partnership between academia, industry, national labs, as we think about a workforce framework for fusion. It's a different landscape right now, and we need to, I think, all hands on deck to try to make this fusion workforce strategy realized. And we can't do it in one institution. So I was at UCLA prior to going to Oak Ridge, trying to grow a program that covers all the bases you need. I mean, there's a lot of pieces there, but not all of them. You really need to work with partners and other academic institutions, have industry involved, and look for ways to work together to make it happen.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just to tap into some of the points that were brought up, 60% of private companies spun out of universities. So that really speaks to that innovation at the universities that's really driving the field. And of those 60%, 95% of the private investment has gone into these university spin-out companies. So that speaks a lot to that hands-on experience that gives you that intuition. We need to be building these machines, and people need to have that intuition, and it needs to be driven by an engineering perspective, too, from a field that's historically been driven by physicists, really looking to that application lens. And with that brings in bringing in more faculty, bringing in more support to adapt the curriculum to tackle these challenges, and then also bringing in entrepreneurship too into the education system. We see that a lot that has happened in the biotech industry at universities, but we haven't seen that yet at that scale for fusion energy, and that needs to grow.
I'm going to pick on Troy because I want to talk about those apprenticeships that you guys do at Oak Ridge. Could you just give us a brief synopsis of how that actually works and the benefits of having that apprenticeship where you're tied with the university and also industry? I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. Well, I'll first give a shout out to my colleagues at Princeton Plasma Physics Lab. They've run a great apprenticeship program that Steve Cowley started that's really focused on getting hands-on experience with fusion relevant technology. This is something that we aspire to do too at Oak Ridge. We have an apprenticeship program that's started and growing now. We're looking to grow that towards fusion specific, really nuclear specific, of course. There's opportunities on the fission side too, and a lot of synergies there. And so I think these programs are very important. But I also think, going back to the partnership piece, I think having these programs be not just standalone and be part of perhaps a regional partnership program where you have opportunities, the educational institutions are involved, you have internship opportunities, apprenticeship opportunities at national labs and in industry. If we can coordinate together, this goes back to, we can't solve it all in one institution. We have strengths at Oak Ridge, and there's strengths at neighboring institutions we need to tap into. So finding ways to work together. But I think, growing apprenticeship programs at the national labs is something we definitely should be doing.
So this can't be an AI Plus Summit if I don't say AI. So Stephanie, could you tell us about the grant you just won for AI and how it's using it to actually accelerate workforce development at Wisconsin?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually broader than Wisconsin. So we've heard a lot about AI, right? And it really provides a critical tool to amplify human abilities. So with that, you need the data sets, and you need people to understand the AI-enabled tools, to develop them, and how to apply them. And so we're seeing an increase in the release of public data sets and tools to facilitate this, but we still need to upscale instructors and students on how to adapt these mindfully and effectively too. So I'm part of one of the DOE-funded efforts in AI for applying it to fusion energy. It's open and fair fusion for machine learning applications. It's led by MIT, and some of my co-PIs are here today. And it's really tapping into how do we use that and accelerate it. So part of it is bringing together data scientists, engineers, plasma physicists, to develop these tools and to curate the data and the associated metadata to make this open, to develop these tools. It's also bringing in a 2-week summer school every year, where half of it's coursework, where you're learning the data science and the machine learning and the AI tools, and then you're learning plasma physics and fusion energy, and then you're doing hands-on application of it. The other thing is curating and getting enough data so you can train reinforcement learning on this, right? And that's hard to do at these large user facilities. So my experiment, what we're doing is we can provide a lot of data that allows people to train their algorithms on, and without taking up machine time at these larger facilities, that then you can work with experts in that field that then can develop the tools locally and then deploy it on larger scale machines down the line.
That's incredible. David, now you are on the receiving end of all this talent. When you are seeing the field here, what skills are you looking for from recent grads and grads And if you could look in your crystal ball, what do you think you're looking for in the future?
So for TAE specifically, right, like a lot of other companies, we have a particular technical configuration, particular architecture, and things that we are looking for, I think, notably are not the same as every program here, and particularly every academic program. So, our core technology revolves around something called a field reverse configuration, FRC. We are looking for people who are familiar with FRC topology. We drive those reactions, something called a neutral beam. It's like a tiny particle accelerator. We are very interested in people who have that level of expertise on this particular technology, which interestingly, we have needed to go abroad to close friends and allies, including the UK, to find deep expertise on that. And we also are looking to burn an advanced fuel, hydrogen boron, PB11, which is different than the traditional deuterium-tritium. So we need people who have expertise with that fuel. In this case, for instance, some of the expertise that's happening there happens to be in Japan, right? National Institute of Fusion Sciences, we've done a lot of work with over the years. And so that's TAE specific. I think you're going to find companies that are all going to have versions of that. Now, I will say, increasingly, we have seen more collaboration, not just with national labs and research outfits, but also other companies. We released a paper recently about these neutral beams and our ability to drive a reaction just with them. We received a lot of inbound from other fusion companies that might want to license that technology. And so I think you're going to start seeing more of that sort of cross-connectivity, which, the crystal ball question, okay, what in the future? Well, one we've already talked about, building a plant, right, that transition point. So things like how to do direct energy capture with an FRC or other configurations. Jack is probably talking about that for Helion. So that's certainly one of the areas that we want to think about. We want to think about those that are going to be looking at the regulatory policy communications side. Sort of joke, the real fusion is the friends we make along the way. We need people that are actually going to be able to interface and engage with the national security community, the regulatory community, the legal community. There is an entire body of law and practice on fusion insurance, right? Every aspect that has to be built. So we have to think about those, and then ultimately, look, the last key piece of it is we need people who are going to move adjacently into this field. So, as you already heard Stephanie talk about, AI plus, we've been working in the advanced machine learning space for over a decade. Google is on our cap table and a longtime partner doing early machine learning for fusion. I think as people who are now coming out of places like MIT and elsewhere, and they think about, I've got these AI skills, and maybe I don't just want to build a single large language model. How can I change the world? How can I really advance the status of science with this technology that is AI, advanced machine learning? Well, fusion is one of the best ways to do that. So, looking in the crystal ball, yes, I think it's the advanced computation piece. I think it's the interface of the supply chain piece. And I think it is the people that are able to bridge those and communicate it. Because this is not just a science project in a lab of a few people anymore. This is now a national economic movement and is going to hopefully become a substantial, firm, baseload source of US energy at a time when we'd have to build pre-AI one new 1 gigawatt plant every week from now until 2050 just to meet demand. Now add AI, some estimates say that would then double it. We are not building 2 new 1 gigawatt reactors in the United States every week, period. And that's why I think it's all hands on deck.
Couldn't agree more. So I have you for about 2 more minutes left, and I want to talk to the question I asked before, but I want to make sure I give the audience. So a little thought experiment. Somebody comes to you who's 18, and they say, I really am excited about fusion. What career advice should you give somebody? How do I enter the fusion workforce? How do I, they can be whatever you want here.
Okay, we're looking at me first.
Go for it.
Inspire the next
So
generation.
I always give them the advice of follow what you're passionate about. Because that's what brings you joy. That's what excites you and keeps you going. And I can inevitably find a way for them to fit into fusion. And they bring that curiosity and an excitement that leads to innovation. And I can work with that. Yeah.
No, I agree completely. I mean, I think there's so many opportunities. I mean, we mentioned all these possibilities of how you contribute to fusion. It's obviously the technical work, but to make this successful, you need a wide range of skill sets, and basically anybody in this room and outside this room in particular can find a way to contribute to fusion. And so I agree with Steffi completely. You want to do something you're passionate about. That's going to be the best path for you. So if you're passionate about fusion, there's a way for you to get involved.
So the advice is to an 18-year-old?
You know what? You could, for you can say whatever you want.
You're too late, kid. It's already happened. No, I'm just kidding. No, quite the opposite. Really, look, I mean, I've been very fortunate to be involved in several kind of technologies that were right at that intersection of national security and national imperative. And I got to say, where we are in fusion right now reminds me a lot of where we were in AI in 2015, 16, 17. I was there most people didn't care. We wrote some government reports about it, a drop in the ocean, and now here we are. I think we will be exactly there in 5-ish years with fusion. And so I think, as you heard from my co-panelists, the opportunities are truly limitless because we are building a whole new economy of energy at a time that we absolutely need it. And so hopefully we can get things back on the rails. I want to take a moment and acknowledge we have a lot of federal colleagues who are here right now and are not getting paid. So thank you for being here. We got to get that back on the rails, and with that, hopefully, we can keep advancing the recommendations in this report to build this fusion economy.
I cannot think of a better way to go into our coffee break. Would you please join me in thanking our panelists?
Okay, well done.
Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy a coffee break.